Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. Apologies, my voice is a little bit shot because I saw Rammstein yesterday. It was such an awesome show. I really enjoyed it. So anyway, sorry about my voice. So I recently got myself a Neural DSP Quad Cortex. Here we go. Finally got one of these. I did do an unboxing video recently, but this is the first serious video that I'm gonna do with this unit. First, what I'm going to do is give you my initial impressions after having used this thing for a couple of days, and then we're going to compare this thing to my actual Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier, both the built-in Recto amp models as well as a capture of this amplifier, so should be a lot of fun. I've only spent a couple of hours with this thing, so I guess I've only scratched the surface, so to speak. But overall, my first impressions are really good, and everything that I'm saying here is just based on my own personal experience and my own personal opinion. I'm definitely not affiliated with Neural DSP in any way. So I really like the touchscreen on this thing. It's a lot of fun to work with. It works really well. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky when you're typing in things with the virtual keyboard and stuff like that. And sometimes some of the knobs on the touchscreen are a little bit too small for my big fat fingers. But other than that, it's really a blast to work with. The workflow is just very smooth and enjoyable, I guess. And also, once you get to know the general interface, it's quite easy to get around. It's just an easy device to use, basically, and all the menus are easy to access. And what I also really enjoy is the fact that the foot switches also act as rotary controls. That's also a very clever function, in my opinion. So overall, it's a fun little device to work with, and it is user-friendly indeed, in my opinion. Of course, a dedicated PC editor via USB would be a great thing. It would make working with this thing a lot easier when you hook it up to your computer, of course. But Neural DSP have stated that they are working on such a thing, so we're just going to have to wait for that. And the built-in amp models on this thing are quite nice as well, I must say. Some of them are better than others though, so they're definitely not all amazing. But you should definitely be able to get some nice tones out of the stock amp models on this thing. I do feel that there's room for improvement on the stock amp models though. Some of them just aren't as realistic as some of the amp models in the Helix, for example. So some tweaking here and there to make the amp models sound a little bit more realistic would be something that I would recommend. The effects that I tried so far were really impressive as well. Really good sounding, really pristine sounding. One of them that I really liked was the built-in whammy pedal. The tracking is really accurate and fast, and it also does polyphonic pitch shifting, which is cool. The ambient and modulation effects that I tried also were excellent, and the built-in noise gates and stuff like that all works just fine. And there's already a bunch of nice effects in here, so in my opinion, when it comes to the built-in effects, it's already a great multi-effect unit. But do keep in mind that I'm not a heavy effects user. I like to put a boost pedal in front sometimes, a gate, sometimes a modulation effect or a delay, but I don't tend to go crazy with that. The wahs are cool too, but I would like some more tweakability on the wah models. Maybe something like a custom wah model could be cool, one that you can tweak to your liking. But yeah, as I said, overall the effects on this thing are quite nice. I also loaded in all my favorite York Audio impulse responses, and that worked out quite well. The process to get your own IRs onto this thing isn't very straightforward though, because first you've got to upload your IRs to the cloud, and then download them into your device. File management also is far from ideal on this thing, so that definitely needs some work. But again, Neural DSP has stated that they are working on that. I also think that they should raise the IR quality in this thing, because right now the IR quality is quite low, especially for such a powerful device. The length on this unit is 1024 samples, which is quite short when you compare it to the Helix or the Axe-Fx, because those units do much higher IR resolutions. That's just my personal opinion. Don't get me wrong, the IRs sound fine on this thing, but I do think that it can benefit from a little upgrade there. Now let's talk about the really fun stuff, the capture functionality on this thing, because that's one of the main selling points for me. In the past, I did have two Kempers, and I just could not gel with them at all. All the captures that I made of my real amplifiers just weren't close enough, and no matter how much tweaking I did and how much refining, the profiles were never close enough. Now this is all my personal opinion and based on my personal experience, of course, but I do think that the capture functionality on this thing is superior than the profiling functionality on the Kemper. The Neural DSP capture is way more accurate than the Kemper profiling in my opinion, so I'm very pleased about that. I'm currently in the process of capturing a bunch of my amplifiers for my own personal use, and I must say that the results are quite impressive. It's really cool. You can get this thing to sound scary close to your actual amplifier, so that's just really impressive. I've been capturing amps like my Angle Fireball 25, and that one got really damn close. Also my Orange Jim Root amplifier, just to try that out, and that also sounded really close. And I've also been working on capturing my entire dual rectifier, so all the channels and modes with various settings. And sometimes on some of the modes, primarily the modern modes, the captures aren't 100%. Sometimes they have a little bit more bass and gain going on, but you can just adjust that in the capture block and then it sounds much, much closer. And that's only in some cases. I mean, some amplifiers are just perfect right away. So it kind of depends on the amplifier. But still way more accurate than the Kemper, in my personal opinion. And I also think that the Quad Cortex is way more versatile when it comes to routing. Because for example, in a single preset, you can load multiple captures and place them wherever you want in the chain. And that's not possible with a Kemper. You can also capture your pedals, your separate preamps and power amps and whatever you can think of. So it's a really fun device to work with, basically. I'm very much looking forward to capture all of my amplifiers just to have them ready to go in this thing for demos and whatnot. The idea that I can have all the sounds of my own amplifiers inside of this thing is just quite exciting for me, especially for demos and stuff. So I do think that the captures do sound more accurate to real tube amplifiers when compared to the built-in amp models in general. But again, I haven't tried all of the built-in amp models a lot. I've mainly used the Rectos and some of the other amp models. But luckily this thing also comes with a bunch of factory captures that you can try out. A bunch of really cool sounding ones, I must add. So when you get this thing, you already get a bunch of captures with it. And by the way, I'm capturing all my amplifiers directly with my load box, so without a cabinet sound, which makes it very easy for me to change the IR or the cabinet tone afterwards. So there's basically endless fun to be had with this thing when it comes to the capture technology. Some other things that I noticed is that this thing works really well as a USB interface, especially when you compare it to my Axe-Fx 3. For the first time ever, I'm now able with this device to play in real time through my plugins with a very minimal amount of latency, and that has never been possible with my Axe-Fx or Helix, for example. Okay, now let's get to the fun stuff. Let's compare the Quad Cortex to my actual Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier amplifier. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the real amplifier first for a quick riff. And of course I'm using channel 3, so the red channel on the modern mode. Here we go. Okay, so that tone was reamped through the Quad Cortex with the real amplifier in the loop. So the signal was being fed into the amplifier, then into my Red 7 amplification amp central reactive load, and then into the cab block, which housed a York Audio impulse response from the MES412 OS package, the Mic Mix 01 to be precise. Sounds pretty great, right? I mean, it's a real rectifier, can't go wrong if you like that sort of thing. Okay, and then I created a preset with the built-in rectifier model, the modern mode to be precise. Note that I did have to turn down the master volume on that amp model to make it sound much closer to my real amplifier, because the default settings have the master control set quite high, and with those settings the amp does get very mushy and flubby fast, so do turn that down for a more accurate result. Just a little trick to make the built-in Recto sound better. Let's take a listen to that amp model alone. Here we go. Okay, so that sounds pretty good, right? I mean, there aren't a lot of amp models or modelers out there that can really accurately emulate a rectifier, but this thing does a nice job. Not exactly identical to my amplifier, but it does kind of sound like a Recto. I also tried out the Recto-Verb model on the modern high gain mode. I must say that that amp model doesn't sound like my rectifier at all, but I did want to include it in this video. So let's take a listen to that one as well. Okay, so it didn't sound as close to my real amplifier as the other amp model did. Okay, so I also made a capture of my real amplifier with the Quad Cortex, and I basically used the exact same settings on the amplifier as I used on the clip that you heard a minute ago. And I think that the capture came out very close sounding, so that's really nice. I did have to go into the capture block to tweak it a little bit. I think I lowered the gain and the bass a little bit and maybe added a little bit of treble. But once I made those little tweaks, it sounded really damn close. So let's take a quick listen to that capture with the cap block after it. Here we go. Very cool. Now let's do an A-B back-to-back comparison with all those sounds side by side, just so you can hear how they compare. Awesome. And now that same thing again, but this time with just the isolated guitars. Okay, so as you could hear, the built-in rectifier model is quite nice sounding. Not as nice as the real amplifier, but it's pretty decent for an amp model. The Recto-Verb model is a bit meh for my taste. Just my personal opinion, but I was just not a fan of that amp model. But the capture does sound great. I mean, there were some very small and subtle differences, of course, but it still got really damn close, so that's really impressive. And that makes it worth the purchase, so I won't be sending this thing back anytime soon. Hey guys, quick little editor's note. In hindsight, while I was editing this video, I did come to realize that the capture perhaps isn't as accurate as I depicted in the video. To clarify, I did choose the rectifier in this video because of the fact that the Quad Cortex seems to have more trouble emulating this amp in comparison to other amps. I forgot to mention that. I still think it sounds good and it's a really nice tool, but as you can hear for yourself, in some areas the Quad Cortex capture of the rectifier isn't completely accurate, primarily in the palm muted bits. I still think that with other types of amps the capture function is really accurate though. Let's explore that more in future videos. I want to keep my videos as honest and neutral as possible, so I thought I would add this little note to keep this video objective. Thanks! So, do I think the Quad Cortex is a Kemper killer or not? I definitely do. I think that this thing is much better than the Kempers that I tried. Again, all based on my personal opinion and my personal experience, but the captures are just much more accurate, and the routing possibilities and the effects and all the additional amp models that you don't get in the Kemper, all of that is just superior in every single way, in my opinion. So what do you guys think? Any thoughts about this thing and the results of this video? Let me know. I might start something like a capture show where I try to capture a bunch of amplifiers into this thing just to see how accurate this thing is with various types of amplifiers. Would you like to see such a thing? Definitely let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see me do with this device. That's all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd hugely appreciate that, so thank you so much. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Cheers!